society influences media, and back and back and back it goes. Maybe moving upward in a way, maybe moving downward, however you define upward and downward. And so, which came first? The birdie or the egg? The chicken or the egg? Maybe it's different circumstances. There isn't just one hard and fast rule about it. Let's look at a couple of changes and think about each one. I think I've got 2 or 3 here. We looked at the picture of this young woman in the first couple of classes, fair amount. Simone Biles, champion gymnast, U.S. Olympic team. And we went through a number of times her experience as it was presented to us by mass media. Unless you know her and you talk to her, you heard about what was happening to her through media. And she had some emotional issues competing and decided to stop competing in the Olympics this year in Japan. And whereas, at least in my opinion, if this had been 10 or 15 years ago, she might have been condemned by society and by the media for being a, quote, quitter, unquote, not being tough enough, etc., etc. In contrast, the media response to her decision to pull out was positive, overwhelmingly positive, basically saying you've got to take care of yourself. You have mental issues. It's not your fault. You need to take care of yourself. So what caused society to change its mind about what it's like to compete, to change its mind about mental health in the last 10 or 15 years? So ask yourself that. I think there have been a number of films that have touched on the topic, and books, and TV shows. I would argue that those examples of mass media, those pieces of content, had an effect out there. Let's look at another change. Gay marriage. And yes, even though society has a long way to go in terms of equality for gay people, gay couples, there has been movement because gay marriage is now certified in the U.S. Constitution by the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court has said that gay marriage is fine. Again, I would say 10, 15 years ago, would this have been possible? And I think the answer might have been no, or it might have been it would be awful tough. And again, I would also say, think back to Will and Grace, think back to the TV show about the high school choir. Why am I forgetting the name of it? There have been a number of TV shows, I think a lot of TV shows in prime time, situation comedies even, where gay characters have been presented as full, wonderful human beings. And that has made a difference in how being gay is perceived. Glee. finally came to me. I was Googling it, but it actually popped into my mind. Okay, so maybe just a little bit, the mass media, some individuals, maybe who had experiences from their lives that wanted to change our culture and show our culture the lives of gay people were good people. Maybe that changed some minds out there, some hearts. Here's another less big, I feel like I have a better word than issues. Tiny houses. Tiny houses are in. What started that? Some people started building them and ditching their expensive mortgages and rentals and buying or renting a piece of land somewhere and buying or building one of these things for $20,000, $40,000, $50,000, getting rid of a lot of possessions and moving into a tiny house. And it's kind of hip. So what came first? The tiny house or the show about the tiny house? This is another one. This relates to the one before the tiny house slide, the gay marriage slide. I don't know if you've heard of this case, but in, I want to say, around 1957 in the state of Virginia, there was an interracial couple whose last name was Loving, which is, I think, pretty interesting. They were tried in the state of Virginia. The state of Virginia said it was illegal for there to be an interracial marriage, 1957. By, I want to say 19, and I have it here, I think it was around 67. The case finally made its way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, just as they did with gay marriage. Yeah, they were married in 1958, went to trial in the state of Virginia, 1959. So the Supreme Court decided that interracial marriage was, there was nothing in the Constitution against it, for God's sake. So I think in a way here you have two people, individuals taking a step. It goes to court, it becomes a news case, it gets into the mass media, and ends up, 1967, the Supreme Court saying it's fine. Well, that's a case of maybe the people influencing the media influencing the people, and back and forth, but definitely action on both sides. Vaccines used to be fine with people. Didn't hear too much about it. I mean, polio. People had polio. When I was a kid, way back a long time ago, this was a big issue. In fact, the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, got polio when he was in his late 20s. Couldn't really walk without aid. For the rest of his life was in a wheelchair. This was a serious disease, and a vaccine was invented by a Jonas Salk, S-A-L-K. People were awfully glad to get it. It was a shot, and as you can see here, for kids, it ended up also being an oral vaccine. Parents rushed to get it for their kids. And all kids in elementary schools had to be vaccinated for measles, mumps, and other things. Now, all of a sudden, there's something wrong with vaccines, or there's something wrong with telling you have to get a vaccine, which is bullshit and ridiculous. Because getting a vaccine is, in my opinion, not a matter of personal freedom or personal choice, because you can make somebody else sick. If you want to smoke, smoke, but don't blow your smoke at me, okay? Go do it in your cabin up in the woods by yourself. And it's the same thing with vaccinations. You're not getting vaccinated means you could be sick and not know it and infect other people. And that isn't fair. What has changed our society's feelings about that, at least with a significant group of people, such that the vaccination rate in the U.S., double vaccination rate is 60%. Why is that? Okay. And that brings us to our next topic, which is freedom of the press. I'm going to keep going here for a bit. Freedom of the press. We've talked about this fellow too, Jamal Khashoggi. He was a Saudi-born journalist who ended up moving to America, getting a job with the Washington Post, a steamed newspaper now owned by Jeff Bezos. When he was in Saudi Arabia and for much of his career, he was a critic of the Saudi regime, the family that runs Saudi Arabia. And he must have made some people pretty angry because, as you can see here, on October 2nd, 2018, he walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, where he was murdered. He was murdered because he was a journalist who was critical of the Saudi regime. And he was murdered by individuals of the Saudi regime who were sent there to kill him. And the issue has been who ordered them all to go. And that is not really debated very much. I think most, I'm not sure there is direct quoted evidence, at least none that has seen the light of day. The suspicion is that the young gentleman who was the heir apparent to the throne in Saudi Arabia is the most likely suspect. Freedom of the press or not. What do governments do that don't like a press criticizing them? Well, here's an extreme example. Here's another example. Now, this is not the press per se, but this is a tennis star in China named Peng Shuai. She was ranked #1 in women's doubles, who went on to social media and made a posting claiming that a very high official in the communist government raped her. Now, shortly after that post appeared, she disappeared. The post was taken down. Information about her in Chinese government websites and other places were taken down. And she had not been heard from. To its credit, the Women's Tennis Association, the WTA, has made a fuss and said they will cancel all events in China, even though it would cost them millions of dollars, unless they knew she was okay. And there's been some back and forth on that. She did make some kind of statement. She was on camera with them. They still suspect that she is being, quote, handled, unquote, by the Chinese government. China is not sensitive to public criticism of its officials. And she herself was a media, because of her stardom, she was a factor in the media, and when she posted on Twitter on a mass medium, it got people's attention, and the irritation is taken away. Not killed, but pulled out of the spotlight, not allowed to communicate, and all of her postings taken down. Freedom of the press is important. Now we're going to keep talking about freedom of the press, but we're going to add another factor here that is part of the discussion of freedom of the press, which is and especially disinformation. Misinformation. Oh, that's my fresh direct order. Time to stop. Okay, so we're going to explore mis and disinformation, and I'm about to stop here. Oh, stop before I know it. Okay. So, some data from the Pew Research Center, survey done in 2020, that young folks turn to social media for news, okay, which leads to some concerns given mis and disinformation.